Okay, it is 6:30 p.m., and I'll call the Charter Review Commission of Thursday, June 5th to order. First up is roll call.
Herval,
Here.
Knight,
Here.
Ford,
Here.
Villalobos, Walsh, Glickler,
Here.
Kirkwood.
Here.
All right, moving on to item number Roman numeral 2, item 1. Consider approval of the Charter Review Commission May 12th, 2025 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any corrections, changes, questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Glicker, seconded by Commissioner Kirkland. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to item Roman numeral 3, citizen comment period. At this time, if there are any citizens that are wishing to speak, please step forward. Seeing none, I will move on to Roman numeral 4, considering possible action. Item number 2, consider approval of recommended changes to Article 12 of the City Charter. Ms. Elkhorn-Reed.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Amy Alcorn-Reed, City Attorney for the record. Jennifer, are we able to get the red line up on the screen for Article 12?
Is it the same?
I can share it right now with you.
No. I'm in there, but he's got the presentation up, so
do you Okay. wanna go through the presentation? That's the other presentation.
Oh.
That's for the next item.
Grant, can you switch it to the Ring Central?
So last meeting, we talked about Article 12 for a good chunk of time. Thought it was a really good discussion. I had a lot of notes, and I attempted to put those notes into words that I hope reflect what you guys were trying to do. And that's why I bring it back to make sure I did. So Jennifer's going to pull up the red line now, and it is not in red line. Oh, you have the whole thing. I have a different one for Article 12. Hold on. I'll share this one with Jennifer. Jennifer, I just sent you the one for Article 12. There we go.
I'm so sorry.
No, I just sent it to you. Open the one I just sent you to. So we started with 12.01, which has a lot of changes. And so I would really like to get that up before I get too far into it, although you probably have it in front of you.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes,
while we're waiting.
I have a small clarification.
Okay.
On that first section that we added, under 1, it says as set out in Chapter 36 Penal Code. Maybe we should put Texas Penal Code. Just because, I don't want people like trying to search the penal code in our ordinances.
We can do that. I don't know if it'll show on the screen, but I did make the change on my copy. So the first big chunk of blue was copied from, I believe it was Pflugerville, based on the suggestion by one of the commissioners last meeting to have some language about the purpose of the ethics provision. And then the second one was my attempt to try to put together the conversation we had about how we wanted commissioners appointed and how long their terms would be and when and if they could be reappointed. So I'm happy to discuss anything in there that you think may not reflect what the commission was looking for or any other changes you might have. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. In that second section that was added about vacancies, it says that vacancy shall be filled by the city council member who is elected at that time. Maybe we should say who is subsequently elected.
Could do that. I was trying to get to it would wait until after the election. So I don't want it to say it's the,
Yeah.
because if it's the same council member and that council member gets reelected, then that council member still gets to appoint. Just trying to get there, but we can try subsequently elected. Anything else?
Commissioner Knight?
I also have another question. I thought that we were going to state, and maybe this should be a separate section, I'm not sure, that the city council may appoint an ethics attorney. There is a sentence at the bottom of this.
It requires it on the sentence at the bottom.
Yeah.
Do we want it to not be required?
Yeah, we do want, but we had a thing in there, Commissioner Glickler mentioned that if
Oh.
possible, they should be qualified
Right,
in
we wanted to add
administrative
requirements
law.
there.
Yeah,
That just didn't make it into my notes.
Yeah, the requirements, that Commissioner Glicker, what was it?
it was administrative
Administrative
law,
law.
I think.
I think it's, what we want is a licensed attorney in the state of Texas with at least a set number of years of experience with a preference given to someone with previous municipal experience or administrative law experience.
That was it.
That's it.
Pretty close to exactly it.
Okay, does anybody else have any other comments in regards to those two sections that were redlined? Okay, so with the change in the first section to add Texas, after Chapter 36, Texas Penal Code, do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes on that. And then on the second section, that if vacancy on the Ethics Commission occurs less than 90 days before the end of the term of any city council member, is subsequent come before the city council member there?
No, after.
It says the council member who is subsequently elected.
Subsequently elected. Oh, okay, so it's after that. So to add the word subsequently there, do I hear a motion to approve?
Well, let me clarify. So
Okay.
we're going to put subsequently in front of elected and strike at that time.
Correct.
Okay,
And as such, I move to approve.
Second.
okay. First by Commissioner Glicker, second by Commissioner Knight. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna read out the sentence I just wrote on the independent legal counsel to see if it's okay. But I do want clarification first. Is there a set number of years that experience that we want them to have?
I
3,
thought-
5, 10?
I thought we said 4 or 5.
Normally, in situations like that, it would be 5. You have to be an attorney for 5 years to be eligible to sit for a board certification exam.
It's also the provision that has my job says that I have to have been licensed for, I think, at least 5 years.
I think
Okay.
it should be 5 minimum.
Okay. So with that, let me read that out. It says, "The independent legal counsel must be a licensed attorney in the state of Texas who has been licensed for at least 5 years. Preference will be given to an attorney with previous experience in municipal or administrative law."
Everybody good with that?
I'm good.
Hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, so that gets us to 12.02, acceptance of gifts. And in that one, the request was that we add some language requiring a definition for nominal value. And that the definition must include a value for a per gift amount and an aggregate annual amount of gifts.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Go.
I'll just point out that that was language I think that I had looked up while we were sitting here that I found in another statute in the state, and so that's where it came from. And then with that, I support it.
So that's a motion?
Sure, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Interest in city contracts, I think we looked at it last time, but I did make a little change that I think might make it a little bit more comfortable for the people who are a little less comfortable with it, which was I added at the end that it would be for supplies or services that are made available to purchase by all members of the public on the same terms as they're made available to the officer or employee. So that the officer or employee doesn't get a discount, a special deal, early access, same terms as the general public. I think that would solve the issue that Ms. Knight pointed out last meeting.
I like that, and I noticed in the paper today, there's some stuff coming up for sale by the city.
Okay.
okay. Did anybody have any comments, concerns?
Move to approve the changes.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Ford and second by Commissioner Villalobos. All in favor, or any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then 12.04, I added the sentence at the end that says, "A contract in which an officer or employee of the city has or acquires an interest in violation of this provision may be declared void by city council." That was requested. I can't remember which commissioner requested it, but it was requested at the last meeting.
Okay, any comments? Commissioner Knight?
Commissioner Villalobos suggested at our last meeting, or some meeting, that perhaps we wanted to specifically state that there should be an explicit recusal if there is a conflict of interest.
That is in 3.08 of the charter. So we've talked, we can look
okay.
at that on the next item, or we could discuss maybe we want to move it to here so that you're not looking in two different places for the recusal.
Or can you just say C, section 3.08?
We could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody good with that sentence, and then add C, section
I
3.08?
do want to make one note before we do that. 3.08, I think, only applies to city council.
Okay,
So if we want to make it apply to everybody, maybe it would be better to move it. And we can think about that, but I'm just trying to make sure.
It should include
That there's a
everybody, just the
difference.
protection for them as well,
Right.
staff member.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
So maybe instead we either copy some of that language or move some of that language from 3.08.
Everybody good with that? Do I hear a motion to approve with the addition to move the recusal language to this section? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. A motion by Commissioner Knight, seconded by Commissioner Villalobos. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, section 12.06.
I think we already approved that one, but I do want to point out that we did change it from 1 year to 2 years at the last meeting.
Yeah,
And I think the original version of this packet was posted with it incorrect in the next item, but that has been fixed.
okay. Comments? No? Do I hear a motion to approve section 12.06?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Villalobos, seconded by Commissioner Kirkwood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
There was a toss-up between Lila and Stewart.
You can have it.
Got it?
Okay. All right, that's all we've got on Article 12.
Okay, so the next item is Roman numeral 5, public hearing, citizen hearing. The Charter Review Commission is seeking input from residents regarding suggested amendments to the city charter. I will open the hearing at 6:45. Not seeing any residents. I will close the hearing at 6:45. All right, moving on to item Roman numeral 6, staff reports and presentations. Receive a report and hold a discussion and provide staff feedback on review of any potential recommended changes to Articles 1 through 13 of the city charter and discuss next steps for the commission.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Amy Alcorn for the record. So I do have a presentation on this item just to go through some of the highlights of the changes that we've made, and then we have the full red line and we can go through any and all of the changes if the commission would like to do so.
Okay, so should we just let you go and we stop you,
That
or?
sounds great. I'm going to go through the presentation. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to stop. And then if any of the items trigger you and you say you want to look at that language again, I can look at that on my red line.
Okay,
So as you know, Charter Review Commission's been meeting since January, twice a month, except for I think May we skipped a meeting. The commission has completed a review of all 13 articles of the city charter and is scheduled to present the findings. I do have the date of July 1st in here, but I understand that date is changing. I believe we're going to be meeting with city council on July 10th, if I remember correctly.
well,
But I'm not sure. It may not be final date yet.
I think it's up in the air.
Okay. So this meeting, and then more importantly, next meeting, the idea is to prepare for that final presentation and make sure that Ms. Herval and anyone else who might attend is able to answer any questions that City Council might have about this process. I put together a list of some of the major recommendations. One of the big things that we've done is in multiple sections throughout the charter, we've recommended simplifying complicated or verbose language and often just reference the state law requirements. There's been a recommended change to the term limits of city council so that no member of city council may serve more than 3 consecutive regular terms in any combination of being a city council member or the mayor. So that does replace the current language that would allow a council member to serve for 3 terms as a council member and then run for mayor and serve 3 consecutive terms as the mayor, getting 6 terms in a row. Council vacancies, we've recommended a change for a council vacancy that occurs within 12 months of the end of the term to allow more flexibility in when to hold that election as authorized by the Texas Constitution. And then we are recommending a change to the section on the finance director. Yes, ma'am.
On the council vacancies, is the legislature doing away with the May uniform election date?
I believe that did not pass, but I'd have to go check again.
Okay.
I know that it was up for consideration. The last time I checked, it was looking like it wasn't gonna pass, and I haven't checked since.
I think the county's working on trying to uniform it. That's more of a county, they're trying to really push at that point. But I think that has to come with an agreement with the municipalities.
Right. And we do ours in November unless there's a vacancy in an odd time, and then we don't really have a choice. We have to hold an election earlier.
Right.
The next major change is the finance director. The commission is recommending a change to section 4.03, which would allow city council to both confirm the appointment and the removal of the finance director and would require 5 affirmative votes of council to do so. Currently, it only allows them to confirm the dismissal of the finance director, and it only requires 4 votes. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that in, I think it's Article 3.05. It states there that except for the city manager, it's only a majority vote. That would also include the director of finance. So
Okay, we can update
we need
that.
to like
That's a
sort
good
of
note.
tweak that.
I think we had already talked about that before we made the change to the finance director. 3.05. So I'll just add after except for the city manager and the finance director. Okay. The next major change that I recall was a change to the initiative and referendum process. The intent of that change was to allow for a city attorney opinion as to the legality of the initiative ordinance or referendum itself prior to the circulation of the petition, so that we don't have residents get thousands of signatures or 1,000 signatures or however many they need, and then bring it in and have the city attorney say, actually, that's not legal anyway. Thanks for playing. The idea is to catch it on the front end. Yes, ma'am.
But that does not include recall, correct?
No,
Okay. Thank you.
Is there gonna be a fee in place to do that?
no. It's currently required after the petition is returned, and that just seemed backwards to me.
It is backwards.
Right. We did change the recall requirements, however, or recommend to change the recall requirements by limiting the number of recall petitions during a single term from 3 to 2. And I think a lot of that was just logistics. It's logistically difficult to fit 3 recall petitions in a 3-year term when you can't do it in the first 6 months and you can't do it in the last 3 months. It's just difficult. The Charter Review Commission is recommending the addition of section 8.15, which is a new section to the charter, and would allow the city council to create a position of city auditor as a full-time staff member who would then be appointed, supervised, and removed by a majority vote of city council. The intent here was to allow for more regular internal oversight of different issues within the city. And it was intentionally written as a permissive instead of a required provision, so that it would be council's decision when they decide the city is big enough for that to be a full-time job as opposed to hiring out to a contract auditor. And for the record, the charter would still require the annual independent audit from a contractor that's not an internal employee. The commission is also recommending a change to the term limits for the planning commission, changing the term limit from 5 years to 4 years, and the purpose of that was to make the term limit divisible by 2, which is the length of their term. It does provide an exception as needed to fill an unexpired term. The Charter Review Commission is also adding the addition of 12.06, which we just talked about, and that would prohibit a former council member from accepting a position as a city employee for 2 years after leaving city council, which is the same amount of time that the ethics ordinance prohibits them from representing a third party before the city for compensation. And then the Charter Review Commission was also recommending changes to the charter review requirements again, so that the number was divisible by 2, so that it would be required for a Charter Review Commission to meet every 6 years as opposed to every 5 years. The City Council would still be required to review the charter every 2 years, as is required now, and the City Council would have the ability to create sort of like an interim Charter Review Commission to review individual issues in between.
Do we have to put any provision in there that it would start, the 6 years would start calculating from this year? No? Okay.
What, just a quick question. You know, every biennium we have a legislative update. So how does that trickle down from general counsel to the city with regards to any contradictions or any kind of issues that come up that would conflict with the current charter if the biennium comes up and there's a legislative update that does that we don't know about?
Charter has multiple provisions that provide that it is subject to state law, and that any provision in the charter that violates state law,
Okay.
that state law would prevail over the charter provision. The reason we made that change, that specific change to the charter review, is that we can only have charter elections every 2 years. And so if council's reviewing it every 2 years, and the commissioner reviews it on the 5th year, and that's between 2 council reviews, then any changes the commission recommends would have to wait a year before they could go on the ballot.
It's a critical issue. It's a nationwide issue with regards to those changes and a lot of unfunded mandates that come into play that really affects the overall budget. So I can remember being in the budget season and having to redirect dollars because we have to focus on that because it's a conflict. And the city of Kyle has been historically, behind on those things, whether it's just overall governance or law enforcement. And not having a good communication piece to the council who creates the budget for that. So that's the reason why I ask.
There are changes in every legislative session that impact cities significantly. Some of them do cause problems with things that are already in the city charter, and so we always have to be aware and review both the charter and the law.
So is that under your purview to keep the council abreast of any legislative changes that might affect the charter or any other?
I mean, not alone.
Okay.
The city manager has staff that review those things as well. We all go to conferences that have legislative updates, and we'll bring that information back. And then, of course, TML provides a legislative update to any member cities
Okay.
pretty quickly after the end of the legislative session.
And I would add, I think that's the reason that we said that the city council could appoint an interim charter committee in between those years for that kind of sort of very specific reason. If something came up that was of such significance that it impacted the charter, the council's authorized through that provision in our change, right?
Right, and something that couldn't wait, that was an immediate need. And that way, that an interim charter review commission, unlike this charter review commission, is not given 6 months to review. It would be a faster review, faster decision, faster action to put on the ballot.
I would add to that, just look at us. We've reviewed the whole entire charter in basically 4 months and a week, and that's the whole charter. So if there was a provision or two that were impacted by the legislature, I'm sure that an interim charter review commission could address it in a rapid amount of time.
All right, so next steps, review the working red line. If anybody has any questions or changes they want to recommend to that. Finalize all the language for each individual change to provide to city council, and then make recommendations about the content of the presentation, which the chair of the commission is assigned to deliver to city council. That's the presentation. Would anyone like to go through any or all of the changes to the city charter?
I'm good with not, because I feel like I'm pretty proud of the work that all of us up here have done. We've all come in diligent, prepared, and whatnot, and, we focused on 2 to 3 sections at a time, maximum, and gave it, thorough. Most of our meetings took the whole 90 minutes. So that my personal feeling is I think that we've done well by our appointments.
If we do not review the rest of them, I do recommend that we get a vote on that change. Ms. Knight just recommended to 3.05 to add the finance director as someone who would take more than 4 votes.
So, did you have a comment?
Yes. Just to be a consistent pest, I really want 11:11 and 11:12 put into Article 1 instead of Article 13. And I move that. I doubt I'll get a second, but.
Oh, okay, I'll humor you. Second.
All right, thank you.
So,
So as a reminder, those were the 2 provisions at the end of Article 11 that we thought were a little bit odd there, because Article 11 was mostly about franchises and utilities, and so the recommendation was to move them to Article 13, which is miscellaneous. Ms. Knight is recommending instead moving them to Article 1, which I forget the exact name of Article 1 off the top of my head.
Incorporation, form of government, and powers of the city.
Thank you.
any discussion? No? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion fails.
So can we get the opposed vote, please, just for the record?
And opposed, all that are opposed, please say
Nay.
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 Thank you, just for the record, keep it clean.
Okay.
Just a quick question. We talk about discussions with the legislative update. Currently, I know that there's a charter amendment that was voted in largely, nearly 87% of the voters voted in, to have the police department do a quarterly update and more than one state of their union or state of the city address to come in. I know that because I wrote it and got approved, or helped do that. So how are they abiding by that under the current system? I pretty much stay involved and see it. And the reason why, from a local government standpoint, is to provide more opportunity for those departments that use taxpayer dollars to address certain issues in you know, their expertise, is to create a better relationship with the governing body when it comes to budget, so that we're not waiting until budget season to address issues at that point, so we can be more proactive. So explain to me how they're abiding by the charter.
You're gonna have to tell me which provision it is, and I may have to go research that for you.
Okay, well, let's discuss that. And that's the reason why I think it's important that we have more communication when it comes to specific things that change, and that we have a redundancy that highlights that. And I know you get caught up with lots of different things, and so does the city manager, and are not always catching how that can be done. At least, at the bare minimum, that it's done as soon as that comes out, so that, and is presented to the council, so that it, so that we can start preparing for that. Because a lot of times those changes are made, and, you know, our taxpayers don't understand why we have to make those changes and why it costs more money to do certain things. So I just want to make sure that we're transparent in that piece, and that we're promoting more communication before the budget season comes in, so that we're more abreast.
Are you looking at 8.02C, the quarter?
7.06B.
7.06B. 8.02C requires submit to council through the city manager quarterly statement showing financial condition of the city, which I believe we do, but it's done through the city manager to city council, so it's not brought to a council meeting and discussed publicly. It would be sent in paper or by email, more likely. 7.02B?
7.06B
06B.
says annually, the police chief or designee shall provide the full city council with a comprehensive report about police department operations, crime statistics, training initiatives, and other information requested by the city council.
And yes, the police chief does that as well. I've seen the report.
Well, that's annual, that's typical
Annually.
for any.
Right.
But there was an increase in intervals for that was passed by referendum.
Well, it's item number 2 under that section,
Yeah, promote.
where it says on a quarterly basis.
Yeah,
So that is data sharing, communications in the form of in-person briefings, news publications, and social media on a quarterly basis. I'd have to ask specifically
So just
which ones are social media, which ones are publications, which ones are.
Just keeping that in mind, how we're
Those
developing
briefs.
that communication with the city taxpayers, in general, right? And I know it creates more of an interval, but I think it's very important, especially when these costs are something that everybody's concerned about in the community. And if we can do that more consistently, obviously, it detracts from a lot of what people don't understand about city governance. So I'm just trying to help. And that's also something that was recommended by best practices by both, by a couple of large institutions that promote better relationship building within the community, so.
you know, Alex, I would kind of like to see that, just taking it maybe a step further, that when they're notifying the city, they should be funneling that stuff, that information out to the HOAs.
I agree, and that, there's a way to do that, with, you know, obviously that, you know, nowadays when you can automate everything, you can make that happen. It just, that was the purpose for it, and that's a strong trend nationally to do because of the cost of governance. Especially, you know, at that time it was more about public safety, but in line with, you know, I've been here at budget season and we're having to pull dollars away from a project that was very well supported by the community, but we couldn't do it because we had to direct those dollars there. And the only way they found out is when they came to budget season.
Now, if you're talking about financial security, because 7.06B is specifically related to the police department. If you're talking about the financial security, I think that's the one in, it's like.
Exactly, so I'm just trying to make an analogy or comparison to that so that we can be the same way across the board, that's all.
Okay.
Commissioner Knight.
It does state at the last line of 7.06B states that the city council shall adopt an ordinance implementing the terms of this subsection. I don't know if that was ever done.
It was, yes.
Okay, so it's just whoever's not enforcing the ordinances.
I don't want to say that somebody's not enforcing the ordinances. I'd have to go look into
Well,
the
there's
exact
different ways to
details
do
of all
it.
the
You could do it through a
reports. Right.
newsletter, you could do it through
I
a
mean, the quarterly
communications.
reports, it gives a lot of different ways, and so I would say I see social media posts from the police department at least weekly.
Sure.
So I know they're doing that. I just don't know. I would have to go look into which
Okay.
ones are considered quarterly reports. And
Not
how
trying
they're
to
done.
point that out in general, just creating a theme of more communication with the community across the board. Because it helps at budget time. It helps an elected official at that time to really stand on firm ground and be able to direct the dollars where they need to go. So,
I do think to the extent that this is or is not being followed, or an ordinance is or is not being enforced, is more of an issue for the city council and less of an issue for us. I mean, it's in here, in the charter, and that's our mandate here, is to review the charter, and the charter addresses it.
Absolutely.
If we're finished with 706, can we backtrack just a little bit to section 5, if that's okay with everyone?
Sure.
One thing that I have remained uncomfortable with was section 5.06 and polling places, where we removed language requiring City Hall as a designated polling place. And I'm concerned about the impact on voter turnout. I would really like to see some sort of option in there where City Hall is sort of always the go-to for citizens.
So I want to clarify. I don't think the intention of removing that was to not have voting at City Hall. We fully intend to have voting at City Hall whenever we can. The intention was that if there was a situation where we could not have voting at City Hall for some reason, perhaps damage to the building that would make it impossible to do it, that it would be at a different city facility.
Okay,
Well,
that makes more sense.
And we did add in language to make sure it was subject to any interlocal agreements with the county who are running the elections, right?
Right, we did make the update that says at least one city-owned facility, which is fine. I just wanted to make sure that that language for City Hall stayed roughly in place, just so that it's, I don't know, a mainstay for voters.
I mean, do you think that we need to have further language in there if, in the event City Hall is not available, at least one city-owned facility shall be a polling place?
I would like to see that. I would really like to see City Hall as a mainstay, unless for some reason it's not available.
I can make that change if the commission desires.
Does that seem reasonable to anybody?
It's,
Yeah, I don't have a copy of the current red line on that.
Can you pull up the red line, Jennifer? If we can switch to the,
I try not to print out the whole entire
Allowing her
charter
to
every
share.
2 weeks.
Oh, come on.
and it's section 5.06 when you get it up, Jennifer. So you can see where my cursor is on the screen.
Right.
I think.
Should
what-
we, at the end of that section, Commissioner Ford, what if we, after the city elections, it said, comma,
I mean, I trust Amy to make an appropriate suggestion, but yes, something to the effect of, if City Hall is not available, at least one city-owned building will be used for any subsequent elections as a polling place.
or something, I was thinking at the end, saying something like, with preference being given to City Hall unless it is unavailable.
One of the two.
I would prefer that because we're having more and more meetings in City Hall. And when we do that, it makes it difficult since the polling place is right behind that temporary wall.
I believe there's some other locations that are coming on board soon that will provide additional meeting space, and perhaps City Hall will be more available. I agree with Commissioner Ford. When you have a designating polling place and you've been coming to it for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden it's not available,
That's enough to turn them away from the vote to begin with. I mean, all it takes is one microscopic inconvenience, and now no one's going to go vote. And so I think having City Hall as a constant is really important for turnout and civic engagement.
I remember when I first moved here, I had to go vote in Newland. And then when they wouldn't let me in at 6:59, I was very irritated. So, I think that,
You can see the proposed language on the screen with preference being given to City Hall if available.
You just have to fix available.
It's still spelled wrong?
yeah,
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, Jennifer's doing it for me. I'm gonna not touch it, Jennifer, you go ahead.
I'm much more comfortable with that, and that was my only comment.
Okay.
I'll move to approve that as edited.
Okay, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. Okay. We need to go back and also, since
Yeah, we wanna approve the 3.05.
3.05 to tweak to add the finance
If you
director
go
in.
up to 3.05, Jennifer, you can see that language. .05. And that's where the cursor is. I added the words "and the finance director."
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the change as stated?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
I'll nay.
Motion passes 5-1.
I think we also need to take a vote on moving 3.01 to Article 5.
3.08, or 3.08, which I don't think we want to move. I think we want to add language now that I'm looking at it. 3.08 requires members of city council who are present to vote on every issue, except if they have a conflict of interest. And if they have a conflict of interest, they're required to recuse from discussion and vote.
No, I was talking about the places 1 and 3 shall be
Oh.
elected, Bob. It was just that last sentence.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about the thing we discussed.
Oh, no.
She's talking about 3.01.
3.01.
Yeah, just the last sentence. And you had a suggestion with like a little placeholder for it.
Yeah,
3.01, there was a placeholder for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's somewhere in 5.
Okay.
Yeah, in 5.02.
Oh, where the election is. So you want to move
The last sentence.
the last, you want to move it to the last sentence of 5.02? And make it the
Uh-huh.
last sentence of 5.02?
under general elections.
Cut and paste it into 5.02. Does that, do you guys want to vote on that?
Yeah, I think we
Before I
should.
actually make the change in my documents?
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve that change? Moving the last sentence, I think it was on section 3.01.
1.
Yeah,
Move to approve.
3.01 to 5.02. Okay, so we have a first by Commissioner Ford, seconded by Commissioner Villalobos. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes 6. All right,
So that's what that would look like.
okay. Any others?
I don't even know what section we're on.
We're not on any
I
section.
would,
Okay.
since I misunderstood Ms. Knight, I would like to go look at 3.08, because we had talked about moving some of the language from 3.08 into Article 12. I think instead what we want to do is basically replicate some of the language that's in 3.08 into Article 12 on the conflict of interest. That was the requirement that they recuse. So 3.08 requires that they vote unless they have a conflict, and then requires that council recuse if they have a conflict. So I think, rather than moving that, because it does deal with voting, what we want to do is take some of that language about what to do if you have a conflict and put it in the conflict of interest section in 12.04.
Sure.
I'm good with that.
Okay. If the
You need a
commission is
Make
okay
a
with
motion.
that,
Motion to approve?
yeah, go ahead and make a motion, and I'll draft it and send it out after the meeting.
Okay,
Motion to approve consolidating language for
From-
clarity and.
wait, a minute. What section did we,
So the 3.08 has some language about, if any member of council has a conflict of interest, that fact shall be stated in the minutes, and such member shall abstain from discussion and voting on the issue. But it also has a lot of language about the fact that they need to vote if they don't have a conflict of interest. And so rather than moving 3.08 into Article 12, what I would like to do is copy that language about abstaining from any discussion and voting or decisions on the issue into 12.04, which deals with conflicts of interest.
So-
Just copy it over, so have the same, basically the same language.
So I just got a real quick question about the language. So if I wanted to purposely not vote on something, could I just get up and go to the bathroom? Or is everyone going to wait for me to get back to vote?
No, if you're not present at the dais, in theory, you could go to the bathroom and miss an item, yes. It's difficult to say,
Okay.
no, you can't go to the bathroom.
Okay, I was just clarifying that.
so, Amy, there's been a couple of instances where people, so you have to vote yes or no?
If you're
Or-
sitting at the dais and you're on city council, you are required to
Yes.
vote, you cannot abstain.
You cannot abstain,
That's the way this is written, yes.
even though that's in Robert's Rules of Order.
Correct.
It's-
Charter, I mean,
You need to vote.
we
You
have
gotta
not
be
adopted
elected.
Robert's Rules of Order, and the charter would overrule it if we had.
Okay, all right.
I just want to clarify, make sure I understand what you're saying. So 3.08 says all members of the council shall vote, provided that if they have conflict of interest, the fact shall be stated in the minutes, and such member shall abstain from discussion and voting. 12.04 says no officer or employee shall participate if the officer or employee has a personal, financial, or property interest, direct or indirect. But, so you're just talking about bringing over the language about the facts being stated in the minutes?
Right, that if any officer or employees, has the ability to vote on the item, they will abstain from any discussion or decision or vote. And if they do have the ability to vote, then that vote would be, the abstention would be listed in the minutes, stated in the minutes.
Okay.
So that way, the same thing would apply to boards and commissions that applies to council, that they would have to then state their conflict of interest.
So we're moving that section from 12.04 over
No,
to,
we're copying language from that section into 12.04,
Okay.
from 3.08 into 12.04.
okay. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I made the motion.
Commissioner
Second.
Villalobos, and seconded by Commissioner Knight. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I will draft that up and send it to you guys offline, so that we're not still sitting here while I type.
Okay.
Any other areas that the commission would like to look at?
Do you guys want me to go through Article 1, Article 2, you want me to go that way, or do we have certain provisions you want to look at?
We will have another shot at this next meeting as well, so if anyone,
When's our next meeting?
I believe June 23rd, if I recall correctly.
I think it
June
is.
23rd?
Yes, ma'am.
Just so that you know, both Stuart and I will not be present at that meeting.
That's correct. I'll be out of town for work.
I'll be out of town, not for work.
Okay.
Who's gonna bring food?
If we need to reschedule it, we can do that. We can send a poll offline on available dates, if that's what we need to do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I have one other thing.
Commissioner Knight.
I mean, I've gone through most of it, I don't. On, 508, I think it's 508. Sorry. Yes, it talks about qualifications for, candidates for city council. And it says you need to have lived here for 30 days. I mean, that might have worked back in the old days, but I think you ought to have lived here a little bit longer than 30 days. You can barely register to vote in 30 days.
I think that's what that 30 days is from, is the time
I
it
think
takes to
so,
register to
too.
vote.
I mean, I would go 6 months or a year.
I would go 3 years, but,
3 years. I would
Let's go to
agree with that.
24.
I mean, you need to have some time that show that you actually
Yeah.
lived here.
I just, as I do with a lot of things, I provide caution about the longer you set that time, the fewer people you have who are qualified to run, and the fewer options you would have on the ballot.
Okay.
You have to think about the fact that people
Leave it
have
up
to
to the
choose to
voters.
run.
Leave it up to the voters.
Yeah.
Leave it up to the voters.
So leave it at 30 days?
No.
I don't have a problem with that. I know there's some highly qualified people that could come into and really be good in this position. They just need to have the opportunity to run.
I will say it says 30 days prior to the date of the election, not 30 days prior to
Right.
filing for office, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Which
that
section are-
doesn't even make sense.
number?
5.08. I would have thought it was 30 days prior to filing for office, so I was surprised when I looked at that, that's all.
I mean, at least 6 months. You know? You should have
Hold
at
on.
least voted in
This is
one.
qualifications to vote.
I was
ma'am.
about to say, guys, this has nothing to do
Not run
with,
for office.
with running
It's
for
voting,
office. This is just regular citizen voting, and that's 30 days.
That's
This is
30
what happens
days.
when we jump around. This is qualifications to vote, and
That's-
that is the rightful qualifications to vote under Texas law.
Let's leave this alone.
It's because there's a 30-day,
Right.
like, activation period for your voter registration to be.
No, I think the confusion was that we thought this was candidate, the commission was looking at this as if it was candidate requirements and not voter requirements. These are the voter requirements set under state law.
Exactly.
5.08
Yeah, that's
is-
5.05, filing for office.
3.02 is qualifications, and I think it's consistent with the Texas statutes, as well as in what we were looking at, just for clarification on 5.08, is that's also Texas law. You have to be a resident to vote in an election for 30
Oh,
days
it
prior
does
to
say
the
12
election.
months.
And I actually participated in a criminal case involving people who tried to manipulate a MUD or a RUD election by registering to vote 31 days out of the election and claiming that they lived in the district. And they got prosecuted and sent to prison. So those two statutes, I think, are consistent with Texas state law and the elections code.
So I think what Ms. Knight meant to look at was 3.02, which, as she just noted,
Yeah.
does say that you must have been a resident for 12 consecutive months.
That's fine.
There you go.
Okay.
Did we get that in there? Yeah, I think we did.
This is what happens when we jump around. We all get confused about what we're talking about.
And you did say that now with the new things we've added today, that we haven't seen the language yet, but that's going to be up for discussion at the next meeting,
I'll put an updated red line on the agenda for the next meeting.
right? So,
Okay.
So if anyone in the interim looks at anything and decides, hey, this should change, one, you can email me while you're thinking about it so you don't forget before the next meeting, and two, you can bring it in with you to the next meeting.
Anything else?
I'll throw out something, and I'll just test the water here. So section 10.01, purpose and intent.
10.01.
I don't believe we made any changes to section 10.01. And I'm just asking, based on our lack of water and our fast growth, is there anything that we need to think about making changes in this section? Because I read through here and I see, I don't know, my personal opinion is, you know, we constantly have water restrictions, but they always stop short of pausing development. And as I read through here, I mean, it would be hard to say that we're taking into account our natural resources, our city resources, our human resources in the amount of growth that we're having in this city. So again, just throwing it out to see if there's something that we need to
I would recommend
maybe
a
add.
pause on that to give me a chance to check recent legislation, because I know there were some things pending, and I'm not sure which, if and which would have passed. So
There-
before we draft that, I need to check.
Senator Kerry did a lot of work on that.
There's still quite a bit of language talking about, protecting natural resources, providing for and encouraging economic growth. So there is some language in there, but if there is something else that could be a little more specific, I'd be willing to listen to that.
It sounded like you were looking for some sort of like pause, development moratorium type.
Well,
language or
something that,
like that.
yeah, a little, yeah.
I know there
something
was
a
at
little
least
more-
one bill on that, and I don't recall where it landed, so I'd have to go look.
well, and I'll also add that section 10.01 refers to the comprehensive plan, which is quite extensively described in 10.02. So you have to read the two sections together to get a gist for how that needs to operate.
Correct, and that was gonna be my next comment, was I'm not sure which sections would, need any changes, but I was just throwing it out there to see if there was any conversation we wanted to have about it, because, my opinion, right, so.
Commissioner Knight?
Building moratoriums are addressed in state law, and state law is very specific about how you do a building moratorium.
And there was at least one bill that was going to make it even more restrictive, and I just don't know, I don't recall where that one landed.
It didn't.
So
did
it
not
would
pass.
be difficult to put that in our charter if we also have to comply with state law.
If we put it in our charter, it would just say, would consider building moratoriums when and if authorized by state law, probably, but I don't know. I'd rather put a pin in it and see if that's something we want to pursue further at the next meeting.
Yeah, let's pin it.
You know, the hardest thing about something like this is that the multiple water districts that we have in the city, and we only report on the one that the city owns. So you really have to dig deep and go to all the districts and read all the reports to understand where the growth is to whether we have the resources or not. Because, yeah, the one that we own and operate is not enough for all the growth in the city, but it's not the only one that operates in our city.
But I'm really more than just the water, right? I mean, our city, our infrastructure, our roads, I mean, when it takes you 45 minutes to get from my house in Plum Creek to Walmart, I could read through here and see where that's not being, we are definitely overcrowding, in my opinion. So, again, just something I wanted to throw out to see if we need to discuss. And I wasn't sure if there was any, I don't have any specific changes I want to make. I was just, like I said, tossing out there to see if someone smarter than I would say, oh, yeah, we can change it in this way or that way. So that was it.
Amy, did you happen to notice if any of our benchmark cities that you were looking at had any kind of language in there in regards to?
I didn't look specifically for building moratoriums, so.
Okay.
I could do that. I could benchmark it and bring it back.
If you find anything interesting, don't
Yeah.
go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think the only thing that I could
Could
see
be
in that, in
radicals.
respect to that is, we really can't do it they couldn't do it in the county level. There was always an argument about that, but if they were to do any kind of the impact studies, how the city could use that to slow down or to address issues, when they have a plan coming out for a development, is the safety impact or some kind of, population impact study that needs to be done in certain instances. They
We
do
do
it, but
currently
there's not,
do.
they do it, but they don't, it's not necessarily used to govern when, how, and to address, right? So, but they're there.
Yeah, we do currently require traffic impact studies on certain larger developments.
Yeah.
And they're definitely required for any development that would get any kind of incentives or PUD zoning, that sort of thing.
But I would also look at, obviously we can't govern schools, but that's also always an issue as well.
But they don't do any other impact studies?
They don't. Mm-mm.
As Commissioner Villalobos was referring to, such
They
as
don't.
like natural resources, like there are some instances in the city, as Commissioner Kirkwood, your drive times, like on Windy Hill, you put a school there, but we didn't expand the infrastructure to sustain that school, so everything around it is now impacted.
The traffic impact study would address Mr. Kirkwood's discussion about the impacts to traffic of the development. I believe that was the discussion.
I'd like to see that
I'd have
impact
to
study
talk
again.
some more with our development services people to see what other studies are required. I know that one off the top of my head because it was a recent change to the code.
The water goes to the state. They have to put together a
we-
plan to the state every time that a new development comes out.
Yeah, and so, let's just say a 2,000 home development was coming in. Do we look at our police department and say, oh, we've got X number of police officers, we've got 2,000 houses coming in, that's X number of people. Do we have enough police officers? Do we have enough support people? Do we have enough? I mean, the list goes on and on. And I mean, I've been in this town for a long time, and I know you can't stop growth. And I was part of some of the controlling it back in the day when it started to boom, and we didn't do a great job then. But I look around and part of me wants to move because it's like, this isn't the town that I know. It's just so big, and it just keeps growing, just keeps on growing. And I'm tired of being told that I can only water my yard once every other week. Drive around town, you see these businesses with super green grass. Don't tell me you're watering once a week and getting green grass in the summer in Texas. So this point just kind of, this little piece just kind of drives it home for me that maybe we're not doing enough as a city and as leadership in controlling our growth. Because I'm afraid we're just gonna outgrow ourselves.
I can do some benchmarking on language related to development in the Pier City charters. I think a lot of the detail is really more appropriate for code versus charter, because just like with everything else, if you put something really
Right.
detailed in the charter and then
Right.
something changes, it's very hard to change.
Sure.
But
Not
we
looking
can
for
see
a
what other
magic
cities
pill, right?
have
I'm
that might
just-
be helpful.
yeah.
So, but
Thank you.
it's a great point, with regards to overall staffing and all departments to address the increased growth.
And we do review that on an annual basis in the budget, staffing and ability to cover services.
Absolutely, absolutely. But, we know how that, I know how that goes. But
There's
it's
not enough.
it's a huge point. It's just where do you get the fees to address it if you're going to grow? And where are you going to cross the line with the state? Because they keep on taking more and more power away from us as local government.
I mean, we need to chat with New Braunfels and figure out how they did it. They shut down a couple developments a couple weeks ago. So, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just, like I said, it's just something I wanted to throw out there. So I appreciate everyone listening, so.
All right. We have anything else?
Move to adjourn?
Well, wait a minute. Yeah.
There's not really an item on the agenda, but we can, if it appears that it's going to be an issue for a large percentage of the board, we can work on possible other dates.
Do you two have another date in mind that we can just throw out there and then they can finalize it for us?
It would need to be in June if possible.
Yeah.
I believe I'm out in,
Or
I'm
very
in San
early July.
Antonio that, from Sunday through Thursday, Thursday afternoon, that week of the 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
There's only two possibilities for June, for this room to be available and for Amy to be available.
And what are
So,
those?
11th and 13th next week.
I think we're looking at the 13th for ethics.
We are, you're right.
Friday the 13th?
And 11th,
That's
I'm not available.
Yeah, I'm not available.
However.
We could do
Amy-
early July as well, but the idea is to have that done before
Yeah.
whatever
So you're not
presentation we have.
available June 25th?
I am not available
What
June
is-
25th.
Okay, June 30th?
No, she
Yeah.
said there are only
The
2
room's
days.
not available June 30th. So I was gonna say, Amy, that if this opens up for the 23rd, we might be able to have ethics on the 23rd.
Yeah, we'll look at options and send you some options for maybe either all the rest of June and early July.
So you're swapping the 13th and the 23rd?
We don't know.
We
We'll
don't know
But I mean, a
yet.
possibility, right?
We'll see, yeah,
I
we'll
will
have to
keep
see.
the 13th open for you,
Okay,
because you've already got somebody in my house earmarked for the 23rd.
okay. No,
For
right.
July, we have the 2nd, the 3rd, the 7th, 9th, or
Let's-
11th.
Let's circle back and we'll send out some options and see if there's a different date. If we have a quorum, we can do the 23rd without the people who are going to miss, but we'll need to see. Because
Okay.
obviously if we're not going to have a quorum, we're going to need to reschedule.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
So there's only one,
So it'd just be me and you going on the 25th?
well, and we don't know about him.
Well,
It does look like we'd have a quorum on the 23rd, so I don't know what the commission wants to do on that, but we'll circle back and we'll let you know.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All right, it is 7:35.